Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today we're talking about Zoids Wild Blast Unleashed. I'll take generic title for 500, thank you. I did play with Zoids as a kid. I don't know if they're still like this now, but back in the day they were basically like models. You put them together, not like Legos, but you would like punch out the pieces from a plastic board and you would put them together, kind of like what you would expect by when you like put together a like airplane model or a train model or something like that. And they were these really cool robotic dinosaurs. Watch out, Horizon Zero Dawn. Zoids did it first. I had no idea that there was a TV show or this franchise was even still continuing on after my childhood days, however. There might have been a TV show back then, but I'm not sure. I do recognize some of the Zoids as I do own or did own some of them in the past. Maybe they're with my mom. Mom, do you remember Zoids? She's my only listener. But going into this, I was pretty excited to see what a Zoids game could potentially be. This one is just another generic fighting game, however, and if you have seen some of my other previous casual reviews, you'll know that I am pretty apprehensive about fighting games. I didn't like Pokken Campaign at all, and so I wasn't too excited when I started this game up to realize what it actually was. It's a little different than Pokken, though. It's a little different than like that Street Fighter Mortal Kombat style. For one, there's not any jumping as far as I know, and you can move around pretty freely around the battleground, both on the X-axis and the Z-axis. Whereas when you're playing like something like Mortal Kombat, it's more like you can only like shift left or right. In this one, you can just move freely. Another difference between this and a more familiar fighting game is in order to pull off fancy moves in other fighting games, you need to input the correct order of sequence of buttons in order to pull it off without getting disrupted. In this one, each Zoid has 3 special moves and they all have a cooldown. So you'll just hold down the R button and use your chosen move. And this can get interrupted if you get hit before you are able to pull off the attack, but it's a lot easier to do than trying to memorize the button sequence for each character. So it was pretty nice for a really bad fighter such as I. This is kind of like kids' first fighter, where it's easy to pull off really cool looking moves if you just know the basic command. Kind of like a Super Smash Brothers, each character has their own distinct fighting style, but in order to pull off the moves, they all have the similar inputs, if that makes any sense. There was no tutorial, and at the end of the day, I guess you really didn't need one, but one in the story mode would have been nice. The story mode itself is basically a chain of missions, and as you do the missions, you can unlock different missions, and it's basically following the path between each rider and its Zoid. I guess there's these characters from the TV show, and they ride the Zoid. I'm not sure if Zoids are sentient or if they are animals or machines. They look like machines, but the characters talk to them kind of like they're Pokemon, like they're your buddy, like your souls are linked to the Zoid or something like that. I didn't look too much into it. There's just still images and texts, but there is some kind of story, so it has that over the Pokken single player. The story itself is very bare bones, but there's lots of different paths, as I was saying before. Like each character has their own little story. Most of the stories seem to be revolving around a subspecies of Zoids, and as far as I know, is just an alternative color of their own Zoid. So our main character, I don't know his name, but I know his Zoid is a Liger, so his path is following around this like black Liger, and that's pretty much as far as you go with the story. Occasionally you'll come across bad guys and have to fight them, or if you're playing the bad guys storylines, you'll come across the good guys and have to fight them. So that's how they just excuse you into getting into these fights. It is not difficult of a game. You do get ranked at the end of each battle, and every single time I got ranked S. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I would never actually be defeated. Sometimes, because it's best 2 out of 3, right? So I would lose one round every once in a while, but it was very seldom. Most of the time I would win 2 out of 2, and even if I died in one round, I would still get an S rank. So I think they are pretty generous with that. during the combat, while you do have your cooldowns, you also have a meter that builds up, and this is like your Super Saiyan mode or whatever, where your moves are upgraded, and then each Zoid has their own specific stat that is boosted up. So, like if you're playing the Liger, I think his speed goes up. There is a block button in this game, which is one of my major gripes, because in most other fighting games, block is very good to be utilized when someone is just button mashing, right? But usually, if the pro players notice that you are blocking a lot, there will be some sort of grab, like some sort of way to punish somebody who is blocking a lot. And in this game, if you look at the commands list, tapping the A button is supposed to break the blocks, but this only works about 50% of the time, and the computers love to just hold that block button. So I really wish that there was a reliable way to break that block in order to punish them for abusing it, because otherwise it just drags out the fights way longer than they need to be. The fights themselves don't take that long. The timer would usually say it took about 1 to 2 minutes, but there are a lot of battles to be had in this story mode. There's a little percentage in the top corner when you're selecting which mission you want to go into, and each battle took me about 0.4% of the way up. So you can imagine how many battles I need to do in order to get 100% complete. And if you complete each person's separate missions, you just unlock that different subspecies, that different color variant for your Zoid during multiplayer match. But that's not the only thing you unlock. Every time you beat a mission, you do unlock something, whether it be like art or music, or you can look at it in the 3D model viewer. At least you get that feeling of unlocking something, of accomplishing something every time you beat a mission. One of the main reasons that I really don't like the fighting genre is because the single player is always lacking. These games are definitely meant for multiplayer, so the single player campaign can get pretty repetitive, but being able to switch between all the Zoids, all of their campaigns, I was able to mix it up all the time, whereas in Pokken, I'm going to bring up again, I was kind of forced to play the same Pokemon over and over again. So at least there was some way of mixing it up. However, it still got pretty repetitive, fighting the same roster of characters over and over again, with not that much of a story to cut in between. One of my favorite fighting games would probably be Injustice, and that's because I'm rewarded with a cutscene in the middle of each battle. Because I beat the battle, I get rewarded with a cutscene. And I know people have their gripes about cutscenes, but at least it was something for me to look forward to, a reason to push forward. This one, I understand that there might be a budget issue or something like that. Their team was just too small to do cutscenes, but it would have went a long way for their single player. The loading times in this game were pretty harsh. I played this handheld on the Switch, and like I said, there's so many different missions for you to play through, at more than 100, probably more than 200, and each mission took about 30 seconds to load into and get out of, and then you have to wait an additional about 10 seconds for it to save. So it was a slog for sure. The music is pretty generic, you know, that like funky electric guitar, but not in a good way, and I felt like I listened to the same song over and over again. Most of the time I would just turn it down and watch or listen to something else, if I'm being completely honest. I like the design of the Zoids, and I don't think that the Zoids look very bad in this game. A little, you know, pixely. You get those jagged edges on the Zoids, especially in handheld mode, but I just think the design of the characters is so goofy. It's like anime, that kid anime show where the hairstyles are just weird. You get bad guys with pink poof balls as hair, and I don't know, the designs of the characters themselves are wacky, but I actually really enjoyed the design of the Zoids. I thought they all looked pretty cool, and I did like how they all controlled pretty differently. They all have their own fighting styles. You get like the crocodile, and he's all about like setting traps and sneaking around. You get the gorilla, he's all about like punching super fast. You get your Liger, and he's all about his long combos. At one point you do get to control a plesiosaur, if I'm not mistaken. For the Land Before Time fans, we call them long necks, but he's pretty cool because he's all about like that way long reach, but he moves super slow. So they all have their own distinct styles, and it was really fun mastering each one of these Zoids. As far as like the main campaign, there isn't really one. You just follow like the main character and his Liger, and that kind of wraps up without too much of a climax, and then you carry on with like the leader of the good guys, and he just fights a really bad Zoid. I don't know anything about the show. There's just not any really conclusion. It's just like you're chasing down the Negazoid, the subspecies Zoid, and then it's just like, okay, we have a mutual understanding. Like, okay, you're our friend now. See ya. And that was basically it for all of the characters' stories. There wasn't like any character development or anything like that in this main campaign. Maybe in the show though, I don't know. Overall, I did kind of have a fun time with it because of its simple commands. It's easy to pick up and play and pull off really cool fancy maneuvers, but the story mode was definitely lacking in a lot of things, and even though I was able to play with a lot of different Zoids, it did start feeling pretty repetitive and hard to play longer than 10 minutes at a time. I think I will give this game a 2 out of 5. If you have a kid or someone who is into the Zoids series, perhaps they would enjoy this because it is easy to understand and they might get a kick out of it. That's it for me though. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Zoids or Zoids Wild Blast Unleashed, and I'd be happy to hear what you have to say. I'll talk to you later. Bye!